Brent, first of all, thanks for joining us here. We're back here at Capricorn Sound Studios where you just recorded your album Southern Star, and you just performed a few songs for us, and we appreciate that.
Man, glad to be here. I appreciate all that y'all do.
Yeah.
Starting to feel more and more like home every time.
We sure love, yeah. Well, we'd love to claim you as one of our own, so come on.
It's all I want these days in life. That's what we was.
Right.
Hey, no kidding though. I was just thinking about this coming in. Is something about Macon. I guess I was so close. I'm only like an hour away.
Yeah, I mean you're basically local.
Yeah, that, and my dad played so much that I don't know if it was like seeing the forest through the trees. When you're so close to something, you don't really realize how much it just is what you are. And so when I started coming here. Over the last couple of years, have I really understood how much of an effect this town and all the history that comes from it, to musical history, but just how much of a spirit I already had in my root system, my foundation.
It's so deep. I went to school in New Orleans, and I was like, I always telling people, where I'm in New Orleans, which is this great music city. I'd be like, well, let me tell you about Macon.
Totally.
Let me tell you about Macon. We got Otis Redding, Little Richard, Allman Brothers Band.
It's insane how little people know about that. Like they're not as aware of it. I even wasn't, but I was. But only reason I was because I was from here, I guess, But yeah, you can go, when you tell people that Little Richard and Otis Redding are both from this town, it kind of blows their minds every time. I have not come in a situation where I've said that and people have been like, "Oh yeah, I knew that." They're always like, "Really?" It's amazing.
It's cool. Man. And then of course, Otis's family is still here, and they're about to open the Otis Redding Center for the Performing Arts, and teach the kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think back to the first time we talked on the creek. It was about 7-8 years ago. You had just released "Shine On Rainy Day."
Yeah.
Which was I really connected with that album. And I remember I told you it kind of had a Chris Christopherson quality to it, just timeless quality to it, some of those songs. And I was really excited to know you and to see, what felt like the beginning, because you've been, you'd put out an album 10 years before, but you've been doing your thing as a songwriter in Nashville, and that kind of felt like the beginning for you, where you're like, I'm gonna do this thing seriously.
Sure.
And there was a lot of buzz around that record, and I really related to it. And every record you've done 4 or 5 records since then,
right? And
they're all been fantastic. But there seems to be a little bit of a buzz around Southern Star.
Yeah.
And it's been about 3 months since you released Southern Star. So just talk a little bit about how this one feels, what the reception's been like, what the tour was like.
Yeah. There is absolutely a buzz around this album. And I knew that there would be, I would first say that I never consciously make a decision when it comes to making albums that is a directional decision. Like I never go, this next album's got to be this. I always let the songs dictate that. And with Southern Star, before I knew it was going to be called Southern Star and all, I didn't really have any. I knew it was time to start thinking about making an album. And Dave and I had done the gospel album, and now Let's Turn the Page, ... And then the next cycle was upon us. And those songs were all cover songs for the most part, except one. This is all gospel songs I grew up with. And so when this album started to reveal itself to me, the first song that I wrote was Southern Star, and once that song was written, all these other ones just sort of started falling out of the sky. Whether I wrote them or not, each song would reveal itself, and then the concept became more and more clear of like, I got to record this at Capricorn and Macon because that's a Southern Star, man.
Tell me about how the Southern Star was born. Like just how did that song come to you?
Well, I see. When I first sat down, so I'd been listening to a lot of Alan Toussaint.
Yeah, Alan Toussaint from New Orleans.
Yes, sir. Speaking of New Orleans, and and Lee Dorsey, who he had produced. All that Lee Dorsey stuff.
Ride your pony.
Yeah, man. Come on. It's all so good, dude. And just real Southern, you know. And those two guys specifically, Otis aside, nailed that Southern spirit, you know, that is like, you know, Otis absolutely included in this, like during this same time period, a couple years ago, I guess, we came back from a gig in Opelika that was at this, I was driving myself that run, and we had played this camp for handicapped adults and children, and it was one of the coolest shows I ever played. And we'd been on a long run, and I got in the truck and I put on Otis, just his whole discography that is available. And I listened for that 3-hour drive, like at 1 a.m., you know, at night, and just right by myself, and I was blaring it. And I was just thinking about the environment and where we're all from, and that stretch from 280, from the Alabama side of 280 all the way to Ellaville, you know, super rural. And then that's also Dawson is over there, which is where Otis Redding is born. And anyway, I just started thinking about just how country of a dude Otis was. But then also,
was.
But then also Lee Dorsey and I don't know if Alan was or not, but like those guys perfectly mix that they're country folks, but they're, you know, they like to.
But they got a little soul and
they got a little backbeat on things.
And funky.
Yeah, just because it's a.
I told you once before. That reminds me when you talk about putting a little funk in it and getting, you know, and you know, that little front porch Southern funk.
Right.
I think a lot about Larry John Wilson and people like that, and he got that. You know,
totally.
I feel like he got.
Well, that's how the song Southern Star, when I first started writing that, that's what I was thinking about those guys, and how they would take a ballad, and even if it was a ballad, the way that they would put the drums on, like the sounds of the drums would sound like you were on the back porch with your cousin or your buddy, you know, just hitting on a 5-gallon bucket, you know. It's that old dead kind of like dead sound on the drums, you know. But it was all have this halftime, this little funky thing, and that's how Southern Star feels like that drive from Highway 280, you know, from Alabama to Georgia, and I was looking at the stars, and then my buddy Rowdy Jason Cope of the Steelwoods, when I first left down here, he kind of took me in and was my mentor when I moved to LA in 2006, and we used to go visit a little bar when he was playing with Jamie Johnson. This is probably 2009 to 2012, and about 45 minutes outside of Nashville. And the name of this bar was the Southern Star, and it was like it was a little seedy. Like he could do anything at this place. But we'd go there and we'd hang out and carry on, and then we'd go back to his little spot he was living at on this pond, and he'd steal around on guitar. We'd listen to Townes Van Zandt and Otis and James Brown and all these things, you know, till the sun came up. And so I was thinking about that. Also, Rowdy passed away in 2021, and so in this song, I'm thinking of all these things, but I'm also thinking about how Rowd had a lot of influence on people that are fans of this sort of independent country scene, whether they're aware of it or not. You know, it might be indirectly, because I know that Rowdy was telling Dave, man, you got to listen to this Waylon song, you know, like you got to listen to how Richie Albright's doing the drums. And so that would, you know, influence Dave's decision on certain albums that he would make, you know. And so I always felt like even if Rowdy never became a worldwide superstar in his life, he was always a Southern star, and he always, you know, was a torchbearer and proud of the music that came from the American South. So that's how it all started.
Yeah, people are really relating to this album, and you know, I think obviously people in the South are relating to this album, because this album, to me, it's like it's about nothing and everything at the same time, you know. And just like, you know, I studied under David Bottoms, who was a Georgia's Poet Laureate for a while in grad school. And for a minute there, I was studying poetry before I
Whoa.
got into all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing about a good Southern writers is they know how to share that sense of place with you.
Sure.
That sense of place, and that, to me, the sense of place on this album that's what's so special about it, is that if you're from the South and you're listening to this album, it reminds you of everything that's great about the South.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's man, it's intentional. I always loved Tennessee Mountain Home, Dolly Parton, that album. Yeah. And how she's writing a song about an old black kettle, in her little one room shack, and it's things that a lot of people may not have experienced, but the way that Dolly does it is, she's like universal, but it's personally universal. And I know, because we're from here and we know the music that comes from here, that how much of an influence where we are from, like specifically Macon, where we're from, how much of an influence that has had on the whole world of music, and the South, the American South as a whole, just how much influence we have had culturally on the whole world. And so I know that if I just write about where we're from, it's already taking hold of everybody. I mean, you go to the UK, man, they've always appreciated the music and the culture of the American South. The Rolling Stones, the Beatles,
really have.
Led Zeppelin, and it wasn't until the British invasion happened, and they were just a mirror of what had been happening in the American South for decades, and they played it back, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, man, we love the blues. It's like,
exactly.
You come from, like, the blues was getting played down the road where you grew up at the whole time.
Back then you didn't want me,
Yeah, it's simply complex, the South is, and it's always very important to me to make it genuine. I'd rather it be genuine and not hit all the right notes, but paint that picture that you're talking about.
Yeah, and you just played us a few songs, which we appreciate. You played us Southern Star and Kick the Can and It's a Start. And to me, that notion of being about nothing but everything and just kind of encapsulating what it's like to be in the South. Talk a little bit about It's a Start, because I feel like, we were talking earlier and you said that song's about nothing. I'm not trying to make it about something.
Oh, no.
But to me, it's about just being,
Well, I think that's the duality of the experience life anyway. Is that we all try to make something out of nothing every moment since the beginning of our lives, all the way to the end.
Right.
And then we reach the end and we go, well, damn, what was all that for? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, you never heard of somebody when they go to take their last breath, they go, well, what do you wish you would have done? And they never go, I wish I would have worked a little harder.
Yeah.
They go, I wish I'd have sat out on the porch and smelled the wisteria a little more. I wish I'd have enjoyed these little moments, a little more of these little trivial moments, a little more than I did. And so I know that to be a universal, innate truth in all of us. And it just so happens that there ain't a whole lot of other stuff going on around here where we're from. And so I try to, It's a Start is just that. It's about...
That's what makes you a backwoods prophet.
Yeah, I guess. It's just about, it's, most of my songs, I do try to always put a little bit of a double meaning. That one, I felt the need to go, what, critics or other songwriters who read so deep into things is like, I'm telling you right off the bat that this song is about nothing, but it is a start.
But that's what's beautiful about it.
Totally. To me, that's what's beautiful about life. All and nothing at the same time.
Yep.
But that's all that song was. The original line in there, I said, so there's a line in the verse that goes, it ain't about a thing, by God, it's a start. But the original line, how I wrote it was, this song, it ain't about a thing, go on, pick it apart.
Yeah.
It feels so good.
Yeah.
And Lane was actually like, nah, that's a little too on the nose, maybe I ought to.
Yeah.
It's I massaged it a little.
Well, you mentioned Lane. That gives me a good segue. Your wife, Lane, and she wrote this beautiful song on the album called Patina. Tell me a little bit about how that came to be.
Well, first of all, Lane is she doesn't consider herself like a songwriter, even though she writes some of the greatest songs I've ever heard. But she has great taste in music, much smarter than I am. She's actually a pharmacist. She went to pharmacy school.
Okay.
She hadn't practiced since our son was born. He's 4 now. Anyway, we a couple years ago, we've been out west on tour. We've probably been out a couple months, and after a show, I had one of those moments where I was like, man, she's at home with the kids. I'm out here playing music, and up late, and I'm not partying or anything, but I just feeling like wondering, am I being a good dad? Am I being the best dad I can be, the best husband I can be? Am I doing right? And I called her after the show and was just telling her, like, I was kind of having a bit of some anxiety, and I don't typically have that. She does sometimes. And she said, well, I just wrote this song that it helped me get through one of those moments myself. I'm going to send it to you. I wrote this a couple weeks ago, and check it out and see if it'll help you. And she sent me Patina. It's this little phone recorded work tape.
Yeah.
And
man, what a great song,
dude. Well, see, that's another one. On the surface, it's a love song, between two people, and it is about us. We've been dating a long time. We've been together for 20 years almost. We've been married for 11 years. But she, the way she wrote it, it could be a love song, and it is. But on the flip of that coin is there's a line that goes, "All we got is right now,"
Yeah.
and that's it. That's all we got.
Right.
And man, I listened to that song, and it just like put my feet right back on the ground, man. And
I think that takes me back to why this album is so simple but powerful. When I told you earlier, I studied literature and poetry, and one of my teachers always told me, he says every novel and every poem is in the end about death, and or the race against time, and the fact that we only got so much of it.
It's all fleeting.
Yeah, and that's very pervasive in this album. Just living in the moment, appreciating what you got,
Totally.
being, not worrying about stuff. Just kind of appreciating, that, and she captured that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I try to do that with a lot of my songs, and it is funny that this album, I think, as a whole, I was able to paint a whole picture, where I have songs from a whole cohesive picture, I should say. But I like the morning Gonna Come on Providence Canyon.
Right.
Seems like a party song, but that whole song also is written to where you can enjoy it as a party song. But it's also written like, that ain't gonna last forever, man.
Yeah.
A morning's gonna come.
Yeah.
And it won't be fun for anyone if we all hung over.
Right.
The same thing with there's a song on Keep 'Em on Their Toes that I actually wrote with Luke Bryan.
Yeah.
I was trying to get him to record it. It's called Good Times and Good Love.
Yeah.
Don't last forever, and that's too bad, because those are two things I really like. But that also is about, it's just, how fleeting and temporary this all is.
Yeah. And the other song you played us Southern Star, and It's a Start. You played us Kick the Can.
Kick the Can.
Which is right there in that vein.
Totally. That's where my head's at all the time, man. There's a Bible verse. I don't want to get all religious on everybody, but I won't be able to remember it properly. But it talks about the wise person, always has their mind on the afterlife and the eternity versus what is now in front of us, temporary.
Right.
And so I do, but I also know that I'm presently here as well. And so I wouldn't want to be like fire and brimstone, but I'm aware that Kick the Can, that like that song is all about the story so far of my career and of my life and the dream of being a musician. But then there at the end, you know, there's a line that says, God is good, God is great. Sometimes I just can't hardly wait.
Yeah.
That's about, like, in those moments of I don't want to say I'm depressed. I'm not necessarily depressed. I don't necessarily suffer from anxiety attacks or anything. But in those moments that we all have, I think that is me just going, I'm grateful to be here and in this present. But I also
time rolls on.
But totally. But sometimes I wonder what's on the other side. You know, I would never do anything. But I just think about that. I just think, and I don't think that's unnatural to
No,
think
it's
about.
not, and you do it a few times in this record where you kind of lightly muse about, you know, what are the answers to the biggest questions. Well, we can't really know, so why don't we just appreciate what we got?
Why don't we appreciate it? That's all how I try to live, and that's how I try to write. And I think, you know, just because you wonder what might be on the other side doesn't mean that you're, you know, like you're depressed or that you're suicidal or anything, or that you're weird for thinking about that. And I think it's almost taboo to talk about those things in a way that isn't like heavy. It doesn't have to be heavy. It's just pretty normal.
Yeah.
And, you know, if folks act like they don't wonder, then they lying.
Yeah, and again, I think that's probably why people are relating to this record. Why I relate to this record is because it's, you know, it's sneaky in its depth. You know, you're talking on the surface, it's just, you know, it's a record about being Southern in the South,
right?
But it's also, you know,
totally.
Yeah.
It's the well can be as deep as you want or as shallow as you'd like. But yeah, but I'm also from the South. I remember one time I was hanging out with Leroy Powell. This was early on. This is when I'd moved to L.A. Speaking of you were from the farm, you know, and then you came to the city and you
grew up on the farm of Juliet.
Yeah, your bike getting stolen and stuff. You know, that was my experience when I had moved out there to L.A. But anyway, being, you know, Southern country dude. But anyway, that has nothing to do with what I'm about to say. Leroy Powell, I played him a song back then. I think it was like "Hold Me Closely," which was on that first No Place Left to Leave album, and it wound up being my first cut as a songwriter. But it was this spiritual song, you know, and Leroy was like, "Man, I thought all you had rolling around up there was Skoal and Miller Lights." Which is, like, I get that because that is all I do have rolling around up there. But at the same time, you know, I'm out here. I'm in this experience.
Yeah. Yeah, we've talked a lot about the contemplative songs on the record, and another thing I like about the record is it kind of goes back and forth between being contemplative and
totally
talking about having a good time.
Right.
You got some pretty fun bangers on there
and stuff,
like "Devil Ain't Done" and what's the third song?
Oh, hallelujah.
Living the Dream.
Oh, Living the Dream.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Living the Dream. And then what's the
On
one?
No Wind.
On No Wind. That's
On
it.
No Wind, Devil Ain't Done, Living the Dream. And you pick it back up, and that's part of being Southern too, man. Having a good time.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's all, but yeah, see, what I try to think of is, all right, therefore there was a stretch, we don't have to call it what people coined it as, but there was a stretch in popular radio commercial
mainstream country
music that you know, the songs were all a good time, all a party, and all about, you know, sitting in a field and drinking a beer and all that stuff, which is obviously that's what I do that too. I love it. The only problem I ever had with any of that was that it's not just that we're sitting in a field drinking a beer having a good time. At least it wasn't for me. I was always aware that like why are we in this particular field? You know, oh, we're in this field because, you know, so and so's daddy's mama passed away, and this was her favorite. Right. You know, like this is how they got this field. You know,
like when I listen to "It's the Start," I want to go. For some reason, I want to go see Slaughter Creek Dirt Road.
Hell yeah, come on, man! I was just there. I'd love for you to come to see Slaughter Creek Dirt Road. That's where we crawfished every spring. Even the more funkier ones, like I don't know when. You know, those lyrics are pretty heavy. You know, I poured my whole soul right down the drain. Been searching for some sunny weather. So far, y'all, it looks like rain. Hallelujah. You know, I don't know. Try to be tricky. It's a good time, but there's other stuff going on in the background.
So I'm going to talk a little bit more about, get back to this place, Capricorn Sound Studios, and, you know, how you've been drawn to it and decided to be here and do a record here. You know, Greg Allman's first, a lot of people don't know the first couple Allman Brothers records weren't made here. Later ones were, but Greg Allman's Laid Back was made here,
which is that version of Midnight Rider.
That's that southern,
that's
swampy funkiness right there. Is when Greg said, I'm going to take this version of the song and I'm going to make it more southern.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of this record too.
Totally, man. I love that album so much. Man, well, it's kind of the whole history. Again, this is some stuff that folks don't realize. I didn't realize this part, that there would be no Capricorn without Otis Redding, and you know, and the Walden brothers, and it was Redwall to begin with.
Yeah,
right?
Redding and Walden.
Right, and it was. Now,
this was going to be Otis's
home studio, right?
Studio, it was.
Because he already had the plane flying from home at the big old ranch, right? And so it just made him not have to be gone even more, which blows my mind to think about just what a boss move that was, to be like, everybody wants me and they want me to come down here, you know what I mean? I'm not leaving my kids more, which is just, man, I relate so much to that. I keep going off on a tangent, but I think about.
Well, it's interesting to see how much you relate to Otis, and that's really cool because Otis was, you know, you take a song like Cigarettes and Coffee, and, you know, that's such a southern thing to write this incredible love ballad
about just that.
About just
that one little moment.
And
me and my wife, my now wife, Lane, we would sit out when we first started dating. Hey, we would ride dirt roads all around here. It did never really dawn. We knew he was from Macon, but like it was so close to home, maybe we just didn't consider it. It just was. But we would ride around till the sun came up, listening to that song, and all the Otis Redding songs. But that one, then I would go visit her at pharmacy school in Atlanta. We'd sit out on her screened-in porch, and that was our 2:30 in the morning song. Man, we put on Cigarettes and Coffee, and we fell in love to that. But so it is amazing to me that this studio was built because Otis cared so much about where he's from, but his family, and not having to be gone all the damn time. I get that. I ran into Miss Carla the other day. I went into the foundation, and like I can't hardly talk to her, not even because she's like Otis's daughter, but that she grew up similar to my daughter, my daughter is 9 now. And I think about her when I'm gone so much, and I think like, Lord, please let her be okay, and I hope she knows how much I love her and all these things. I was able to kind of talk to Miss Carla about that, you know, and it was just like, man, because I think she was 7, you know, when it all went down, and she's just such an amazing person because of like just. And she for what it's worth, I don't want to get, again, I'll go off on a tangent, but the way that she'll take how hurtful it must have been to lose her dad doing the same things that I'm doing, touring around. When I brought it up, she said she brought up her mama, Mrs. Elma. She said it was harder on my mama than that was just like, what an angel of a person, man, to like take that pain, you know. Anyway, sorry. This studio, this town, feels like home, even though I didn't. It feels like my family, though.
I tell you, it feels really good to us to have you, who, you know, right here from the same neck of the woods, to come in here and celebrate, to really want to be a part of this and celebrate this, and we sure appreciate it and love having you.
I cannot wait for the future.
So, your famous producer cousin, Dave Cobb,
Yeah.
produced most of your albums.
Yep.
And for this album, you decided you were going to produce it yourself, and you got your buddy Orrin Thornton. You got our own Rob Evans, who's the in-house producer and chief engineer here at Capricorn Sound Studios. And you said, I'm going to produce this one. We're going to do it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you told Rob, you said, I want you to go get me some local musicians.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about that. Was exciting for us, but I'd like for you to just tell us a little bit about that decision.
Well, me producing this myself, because again, I didn't go, I got to produce my own album. It was just the songs. I knew exactly how they needed to sound. I knew I wanted to record here at Capricorn, and producers have their own, like I will always work here. And there are other producers that they'll only work wherever. And I knew that it had to be recorded here for reasons outside of myself. And I didn't want to have to fight anybody on that. And so I was like, I have to produce it. And so when we got here, and then of course I knew that I had to use local making players, and or at least Georgia players, and just again to shine the light of that Southern star on present. It's still happening. It's not something that like died when Greg passed away. You know what I mean? And and so and then in turn they are Southern stars, the players here, and so yeah, I wanted Rob. Originally, I was just the producer. Orrin was going to be the engineer. Rob was the house engineer. But I am also, when you produce something yourself, you can, not be greedy. There are a lot of greedy producers who will not give credit where it's due. Dolly Parton has a funny quote. It's like, success is not that hard to obtain if you don't mind who gets the credit. And I just feel like, Rob did a thing. Because I said, who should I call? I want to use local making players. Who should I call? And Rob lined up Leroy and Charlie and
Leroy got that drum sound you were talking about.
Yeah, dude. And so a lot of times a producer, that would be a producer's job. And even but most of the time, if it wasn't the producer who put that band together, they would still take producer credit,
right? Which
isn't right to me. And so those are Rob's players, man. Rob is a co-producer. We would not produce the sound that I wanted without those players.
Yeah, I think that the organic nature of pulling together these local guys to and then
who else am I gonna call? Rob. You know what I mean? And so same thing with Orrin. Is not from here, but I've worked with Orrin for 15 years. On demo sessions that I would do as a staff writer in Nashville. And again, Orrin already getting taken care of as the engineer for that project, but Orrin is so good at like knowing what the mic is to help me get this sound. And I'm just not greedy, man. I want everybody to go. I want us all to go to the top or the bottom or the middle.
Well, it was a good team. It was a good team.
Absolutely.
Brent, I sure appreciate you being with us today.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Anybody out there who might be listening to this who hasn't listened to Southern Star needs to pick it up. It's a great album.
I agree. You can enjoy it on a Friday night just as well as you could a Sunday morning.
True words never spoken.
Yeah. Thank y'all, man.
Thanks, buddy.